Hi, this is Stephen Brower from Irvine Valley Community College. This is for CSIT 256 Computer Architecture and Assembly Language. This is going to be one of the demos for Irvine Chapter 5. In this demo, what I want to do is take something that was from the Chapter 3 Part 3 demo and rewrite it using the routines that the author has provided. So just a reminder of what Chapter 3, Part 3 was. One of the things that it had was this array of bytes to represent the last day of each month. And let me just skip over this for now. And then what was in the Chapter 3, Part 3 demo was this loop. That now this version here used ESI as the byte offset into the array, and so here when it's referring to the array name brackets ESI, it means go ESI bytes into the array and pull out that value. In this case, in that example, is moving it into AL. And then for advancing ESI to the next element, it's advancing it based on the type of what the array is. And with an array of bytes, it would add 1. An array of words, it would add 2. An array of D words, it would add 4. Now, since at that point we didn't learn how to display things yet, it did a dump regs. And then remember, when it encounters the loop statement, it'll decrement ECX by 1. And if ECX is greater than 1, it jumps to the code label. And oops, we had initialized the ECX as being the length of the array. So this Chapter 3 part, whoops, off the screen, Chapter 3 Part 3 demo, and if we look in EAX, well, actually, being that it's EAX, we only had loaded AL. There's other stuff that's up in EAX because I didn't copy out all the code that I should have copied, but that'll work well. So for one thing, if I do change this to a move ZX into EAX, then it cleared out the upper part of EAX. Okay. So what I want to do instead is instead of using the dump regs, so let's go and let's remove that out. What I want to do is call the author's routine for displaying a value on the screen. So we want to do a call. We want to call a procedure. The procedure I want to call is writeDec. And what this will do, this will display the value from EAX onto the console, basically the screen. As a comment, let me just add that this is like system.out.print from Java, and I'm going to put here just EAX in terms of what it's like from Java. The point I'm trying to make here is that print, as opposed to print line, the cursor is going to be immediately after the deck. Well, you know what? With this one change alone, let's see how things look. Okay, because it's the print as opposed to the print line, got one huge long string of numbers going across the screen. So two things. One is if we want to use it like print line, there's another routine that we can call if we want it to go down the screen. And if we want spaces in between it, we'd have to then call the writeString in order to display it. I'm making it up as I go along. So let let me add in here, so call CLRF, that stands for carriage return line feed, and it's the equivalent of doing, printing a /n that we had in Java. So now let me go and build and run this off the screen. And so now we're going down the screen. So if this is supposed to be January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December. Okay, those are the values. Okay, so hang on a second. So let me just do a brief regroup. So call writeDec. So the author's routine requires that EAX have the value. That is the reason why there's another video that I put up for Chapter 5 that shows that there's a value in EBX that we want, and what we have to do is we have to take that value in EBX and move in EAX. But if we want to hang on to EAX, then we'll have to use the stack to hold on to what's in EAX, and that's one of the reasons why I did that, because the writeDec relies on EAX having the value. So which direction do I want to go yet? Let me do this piecemeal. So suppose what I want to do is, suppose I want to display a delimiter. Let's call it a date delimiter. Date delimiter. And by the way, we'll see that there's no. Let me just do the slash, because then I'll show another way of doing it. So let me do the date delimiter with, and so this is going to be a null terminated string. So null terminated string for displaying onto the console. So what I'm going to do is by a couple of things. The idea that strings have to be null terminated, that is a Windows API requirement. Behind the scenes, what the author is doing with writeString is he's calling the Windows API, and the Windows API requires a null terminated string. So the null that we have here, that's not an author requirement, that's a Windows API requirement. Now we'll take a closer look at the Windows API in Chapter 11, but that restriction right here, that's not an Irvine restriction, that is a Windows restriction. What is an Irvine restriction, if I want to display the string, I'm going to have to load EDX with the offset of this. So suppose before I display the date, suppose I want to display that string, I would have to load in the EDX the offset of the date delimiter. And so I'm going to say load EDX with, I'm going to do logically, it's the address of string. The fact that EDX is being loaded, that is Irvine. So that's Irvine's twist, is that the parameter he's using is EDX, well, the parameter that he's using is EDX. That's his thing. The fact that it's null terminated, that's Windows API. I will try my darn doodliest to point out what is Irvine and what is the operating system. And so this part here, this will display the string. And I know I'm doing this piecemeal. So if it seems like there's no coherence, well, that's just a Brower demo. I don't know what to expect. Because I eventually want to stick into here the month. That's what I'm working on, is I want to display the month here as well. But what we have now is inside the loop, I'm loading EDX with the offset of that date delimiter, and then calling writeString. That's displaying the slash. And then here we're loading EAX with the value from the array, and we're calling writeDec. That is displaying the number. Okay, so suppose I want the month to display in front of it. Well, ECX that we had loaded before the loop, and you know what, let's for giggles and grins, suppose I just attempt to do that. You say, oh, it's our loop. This is not going to be well. I mean, let me make a mistake and let me go and correct it. So let me move into ECX, and so let me say this, load EAX with number to display. Again, this is wrong, but humor me. And then let me call writeDec. And this is going to be display the value in EAX. Okay. Oops, that's backwards. If what my intention was that this is supposed to be January, February, March, April, May, June, July, what I have, because I'm displaying ECX, I have the value backwards. So what I could do is, if I load into EAX and let me do this first, the length of the days in the array, that actually would be loading in 12. If I then subtract from that, if I subtract from it ECX, well, 12 minus 12 is actually going to be 0. If I then increment EAX, subtract ECX from EAX, and actually let me do it from length of array, and then if I do the inc, this is going to be an adjustment. So if I did this right, and I'm talking in coding, which is a really bad thing, if I did this right, now what I have is, so initially EAX was loaded with the length of the array that was 12. We subtracted ECX. Well, the first time through, ECX is 12, so 12 minus 12 is 0. I add 1 to it, and that's how I get the 1. Then when we get down to the loop statement here, ECX gets decremented by 1, so ECX is now 11. 11 greater than 0, so it goes back to the top. So then here the length is put into EAX, which is 12. We subtract from it the ECX, which is the 11, which we have as then 1. We add 1 to it, and that's where we get the 2. Because the ECX is going down, then this chunk of statements right here is how can I just display the month. And so what I think what I'll do is just to label this chunk of code is I'm going to say display month number. And so logically, that's displaying the, all of this is displaying the month number. And then logically here, this can be display the slash, and then there's the displaying of the slash, and that's the displaying of the value itself. Okay, so let's just, I'm almost out of time for this 15-minute demo. Anyway, so what I wanted to do is I ended up only showing two things. One, that the writeDec EAX has the value that it's using. I used the writeDec twice, once to display the month, once to display the date. The other thing I did is I did the writeString, and then I used that for displaying the slash. Oh crap, out of time.